other areas, including the future global position of Central Europe, or V4 region, which drives us to competitiveness and innovation-driven agenda and digital economy. As a matter of fact, at the end of January last year, we published this year. So we published a report together with the Polish think tank Demos Europa and 15-member reflection group, which include state secretaries of V4 countries for European affairs, advisors, prime ministers and presidents, and people from think tanks and business. You can Google it. It's called the title Central Europe Fit for the Future. And before the 10th anniversary of the EU and larger our membership in the EU, we asked the question not what where the achievements have been the achievements of our countries inside the EU, but what should be the political agenda for the next decade. And one of the central messages of that report was that number one, we are not well connected as a region. We are looking more towards the West to integrate ourselves inside the EU. But integration among our countries in infrastructure, rail, highways, but also in digital agenda and e-commerce is only at the beginning. So this is homework not done. And secondly, we need to transform our economies and make them more innovation-oriented and digital. If we want to sustain our competitiveness at a global level, because the rest of the world is not at a standstill. They are developing faster than us in Asia and elsewhere. And it's fun to have a model. I mean, one of the warnings was that our model, economic model in the regional movement is not sustainable. It's nice to produce great cars, the best cars around. It involves also some innovation and R&D. For instance, Volkswagen factory near Bratislava is producing now cars which are electric parts, so very modern. But you can see at the latest development with sanctions in Russia that there is a drop in demand around us, which is the market for the product. It affects us directly. So we have to move to the future in order to have our countries and economies fit for the future. And that's the way why also CEPI moved into this subject, and we are grateful that stakeholders we got a grant from the International Fund to look into possible coordination at the level of V4 in the digital agenda, which was picked by the Slovak presidency of the V4 as one of the priorities. It's interesting that its foreign policy, foreign affairs and European affairs ministry in this country driving that, maybe using the momentum from the international level or regional level to bring the message and encourage more of this inside Slovak. I think it's already happening. The momentum has been picked up. We know that there are other partners in the V4 region and in the EU that are ahead of us, and it's very good to discuss the next steps and also segments within the digital agenda with our peers and partners in the EU that are frontrunners, and that makes me happy that we can in cooperation with the embassy or our friends from the government staff to share their lessons. And of course, this event would not be possible without the contribution of SAPIE, so the platform. I'm glad we could broadcast this also by internet, so thanks to everybody who follows us. And the hashtag for this event is
V4, so ECONN
V4. So ECONN V4. We welcome your questions or comments. So via Twitter. That's it.
Thank you very much, Milan, and thank you very much for hosting us here in your beautiful boardroom. Thank you everyone for taking time today to come and discuss e-commerce and the future of our region. I would like to thank our guests from the UK and the British Embassy for partnering with us. Our goal today is to come up with a list of recommendations for the future of Slovak and V4 e-commerce and come up with maybe some ideas how we can progress and move forward. Keynote speeches during 2 parts of our event will be given by Mr. Peter Stevens, he is the Deputy Director of EU Strategy from the European Reform Directorate, Department of Business Innovation and Skills.
Long time.
Yeah.
Long time.
But great, I'm really grateful that you came and you brought your colleague, Ms. Oliver David. So not to take too much time from you and discussion, I'll give you the stage and you can tell us more about your experience.
Thank you. It feels somewhat like sharing some of our pain as a teaching therapy. And I'll explain a little bit more in a minute. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's a great joy to be back in Bratislava. It's particularly good to be cooperating with Digital Workforce. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Mr. Stevens, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let me suggest something. I was thinking that people who follow us on the internet will see your back now, and you are the speaker. Would you mind maybe?
I'm very happy to move. I'm very happy to move. Although I was hoping to be anonymous. But no problem.
Well, it's because we removed the camera a few times today, so.
That's fine. I always feel like I have a very good face for radio. So. We've got 2 sessions, and so I wanted to talk in the second session a little bit more about e-commerce, where we've been doing quite a lot of work. But in this first session, I thought it'd be worth just setting the scene around the digital single market, the digital agenda, and some of the challenges it throws up for us as policymakers and also the industry, and maybe a few lessons from the UK through bitter experience and some recommendations perhaps, or your discussions going forward. So I think the digital single market, there's real opportunity at the moment. I think there's an opportunity for a couple of reasons. I think firstly, we are seeing a growth in digital technologies. I was reading on the plane on the way out, 20% growth, I think, in Slovakia in terms of uptake of particularly e-commerce, but other digital technologies. And there therefore is a real opportunity to shape a market that will continue to grow and prosper. So there's a market opportunity. I think there's also a political opportunity. We know that the European Commission will come forward with proposals probably in April on the digital single market, and therefore there is an opportunity now to try and shape those priorities so that those priorities reflect the experience of member states, not the world as it is seen from Brussels. So I think there's an opportunity there to influence how that develops. And I'm very conscious as I travel around the EU that actually e-commerce markets are very different in different member states. The conditions in different member states are very different. So for some of the older European countries, their digital infrastructure is based on fixed wireless or cable, whereas you come out to Central Europe and it's all mobile. And actually, the policy response will vary. So I think there's an opportunity to set the agenda. But the digital single market throws up a lot of challenges. Now, I wanted to identify four challenges that I think it throws up. The first is that the digital single market is very hard to define. And I find it very entertaining going to ministerial meetings or meetings in Brussels to talk about the digital single market. And everyone nods and says, yes, it's very important. And then we ask the question, which bit? And they all nod and go, it's all of it. And the answer is, we don't know what it is. We talk about the digital single market as this expression, but without understanding actually what it is. And in many ways, the analogy I had, it's a bit like a fishing net. And actually, when you take hold of it and pull one bit, actually it all comes with you. And so what starts off as a very simple discussion around e-commerce soon spins into a discussion about cyber security, data protection, payment systems, etc., etc. So there is a real challenge in defining what we mean by the digital single market and what our priorities are. And within the UK, we went through quite a difficult process of writing many, many papers and having many, many meetings to try and settle on a set of what at the time 6 priorities, or what we thought was important about digital single market. And those at the time covered things like telecoms, data, copyright, e-commerce, payments, and physical infrastructure. And those were the areas that we particularly focused on. And in the last couple of years, that agenda has evolved a little, so some of those issues are moving down priorities, so payments and infrastructure are perhaps less of a priority, and new issues are emerging around how to have a data-driven economy and how do you have competition in a digital world and competition in a single market for data. So the first challenge, I think, is to define what do you mean, what your priorities are. And so I think the first recommendation I would have is to have a process, and it probably needs to be at government level, where you actually sit down and say, we're trying to define what our priorities are. We cannot cover this whole range of issues, so therefore we're going to focus on a few of these issues and make progress on them. The second issue, or the second challenge, is that the digital single market is very hard to govern. So with a list of 6 priorities that I identified, just looking at them, that covers the work of 5 different government departments and 1 government agency. And being very candid, we have had a lot of battles over who is responsible for the digital single market. We have a minister who is responsible for the digital agenda, who has some overlap with the digital single market, but it's not clear. And I think we haven't responded as quickly to the digital single market as we could have if we had a clear sense of leadership. And I think still within government, a lot of departments have an interest, and it's very difficult to govern, to coordinate departments. And so I think my second recommendation would be actually you need to find a system of governing digital policy within government. Whether that's a separate agency, whether that's a steering committee, that's the model we've adopted in the end, is a steering committee with one ministry having a coordinating role to try and manage what is a very broad agenda. But I think without that clear leadership, it can be very difficult to make progress. The third challenge to throw up, I think, is that the digital single market is very hard to regulate because by the time you spot that there is an issue that might need addressing through regulation, the market has moved on. So in a European context, with the best will in the world, it takes 7 years to pass a directive, roughly 7 years, something like that, from the first idea in the Commission all the way through to getting it through the Parliament, and then transposed into national legislation 7 years. By which time, the world will have moved on, new technologies will have erupted, the average life cycle of an internet business is something like 2 to 3 years, which means by the time you've regulated, it'll be onto the 3rd generation of businesses. So there is an issue that actually our traditional response to markets, which is to spot a problem in the market framework and correct it through regulation, is too slow to regulate the digital single market. So I don't have enough answer to this. It's just an observation. It means I think we have to regulate more intelligently. That actually says we need to think about what the outcomes we are trying to achieve are and regulate them only when necessary, because and then leave it to the market, because the market actually will be very powerful And then the final challenge is that I think the digital market is actually quite hard to exploit because it's very easy to get excited about technology. It's much harder to exploit it and make some money out of it. So there's an awful lot of people losing other people's money in the tech space. The real challenge is how can you come up with a business model? How can you exploit technology in a way that makes a difference to people's lives and hopefully make some money? And there, I'm very conscious that my generation are not the people who are going to do it. I'm not a digital native. I have just about got the hang of LinkedIn. Twitter is still a bit of a mystery there. Web streaming I can just about do with a bit of help from my son. But actually, my generation, in terms of the policy-making community, are out of touch with actually running the business in the nation's and therefore, we need to find some way of engaging with the digital natives, the people who are going to exploit the opportunities of the technology, to make sure that we understand what they are trying to do, and that we can reflect their challenges, their ideas, their opportunities in how we then make policy around the digital space. And I guess that links then into the skills agenda, and actually how to really cultivate those skills and those entrepreneurship skills in particular. Within the UK, I have a teenage son who's learning coding at school, which I'm partly impressed by, but then when I look at his attitude to money, I do worry about whether we're teaching them the right things. We seem to be teaching them how to do the technology, but not how to make any money out of it. So I think there's a real challenge there that says, if we look at our education systems and how we develop digital skills, are we developing business skills alongside those digital skills? Because otherwise all we do is we create the technological grunts who then go to work for large multinational companies who make money, rather than actually making a generation of net entrepreneurs to run their businesses. So those are just a few. I hope that's given us some meat to kind of kick off the discussion. I think those are some of the challenges that we've identified and we're grappling with. How do you define the digital single market, what you care about? How do you, within government, organise yourself to address such a broad agenda? How do you then regulate or come up with other ways of ensuring that the digital market develops how we do it? And how do we exploit the opportunities that new technology will throw up by actually creating sustainable businesses?
Thank you, Peter. I think there is a lot of topics we can discuss. We ran a short questionnaire for this workshop, and I was asking business people about their experience, and the biggest issue that came out was legislation. Often changes and too many burdens for business people who start up businesses to basically get on the ground and start working on real business. So I was curious, what is your experience maybe, and what would you recommend to change or improve?
First of all, we don't change that often because it really is issue. Thank you, Peter, for great remarks. I do all of them, I think, because you made so many points there. I totally agree. I think the main problem is actually the one that's hard to regulate because it's moving too fast. And all the other things are just coming from that. So you cannot define it because while we are defining it, it's already changed. So I think the main problem here is that digital natives were born into this and they do not understand the old way of doing things, like learning everything and having rules for everything, because the internet has started as a free thing. And now we are, or policymakers are trying to make more and more laws and it. And we see it with e-commerce, that we don't see almost no changes that would be beneficial for e-commerce, like companies or yeah, any legislation that is being put into this just for securing the customer, and it's actually making worse and worse to try to compete and to do business online, because you have some forms, you have to tell them that you're using cookies. Nobody ever cares. It's just annoyance. And this is I think that's the main reason that the government policy makers are not getting it. So they're trying to make some policies, but they are not doing it best for the people and for the companies. So,
Yeah, I can talk maybe about the Slovakian market.
Okay.
I'm working with more than 6,000 t-shirts, so it's a lot of small and medium businesses. What I can see that there's a lot of passion here in Slovakia, and the people are into the business and they have great language skills most of the time. But the thing is that I think there is also really the unique part of the legislation, that there's, I think I'm seeing more and more regulation, which is not really helping the market to grow. I mean, there's a lot of costs for the companies, for small companies, that they have to work with, and that really slows down the growth. There's a lot of, I mean, the big boom of e-commerce shops, it still is, but I think it's a little bit slowing down because more and more regulation, more and more bad decisions by the government, I can see in the last few years. So I think small and medium companies here need more support from the government. What we're seeing in the last couple of years, it's completely the other way. So it's not helping actually companies, but it's slowing down.
maybe one more thing, as we see it, e-commerce is in some ways even tougher than doing regular commerce. So in regular commerce, there are no laws like you can return anything for any reason in 14 days. You don't have to have all these regulations, anything. Because people just got used to it and okay, that's the way it works. But with e-commerce, it's luckily not that big of a problem in Slovakia, but I know that in Czech Republic, some customers are known as, that they use e-shops as rental things. So you buy camera, you go for a vacation with it, and in 10 days you return it and get full refund. I mean, why? Why can't you do this in a physical store, and why can you do this in normal store? There are many arguments that you cannot try this before, but how many shops are there that won't allow you to touch the device before you buy it? They won't open it for you. So I think this is just hindering the whole e-commerce thing.
One more point, sorry. There's a lot of legislation how to protect the customers, but there is nobody's speaking about how to protect the businesses
From customers like this.
from customers like this. So it's a real problem because everybody's speaking about how to how to enable consumers whatever they want. There is also the other point of view. So I think we should also have a discussion about this on the other point of view.
Do you think that?
Sorry, you can.
I just wanted to ask if you think that self-regulation would solve it. If there would be a self-regulation, so less laws and more of a self-regulation by the e-commerce industry.
I think we've deployed this for 10 years already, and e-commerce was booming. So I don't see any point in these regulations, because it just, yes, maybe 7 years ago somebody started to make these policies, and 7 years for them to come up with. But e-commerce was growing like crazy, and there were no regulations almost, or not as many as today. And it didn't slow it down. And I think customers were the extra. Okay, they were willing to buy more and more online, even though it was not regulated, even though they did not have that many rights. So what is good for it?
And one small remark just for the introduction. I'm a lawyer active in the IP and IT sector, but today I'm here work for a company, e-commerce company, where I'm sharing the blog. And we are operating 12 web shops in 5 Eastern European countries. And so we can see the differences between all these countries. I think there are two problems. On the one hand, there is over-regulation for some topics as data protection and cookie policy. I agree with Michal. And for some topics, there is under-regulation. If I can put it like this. For example, we experienced problems with VAT registrations in different countries, so it will be a topic later of this discussion. So, the biggest problem I see here is the non-unified consumer protection law in the national states. So, for example, the Slovak trade inspection. We experienced a lot of problems with them, which we will experience in any other European countries. Michal said that Slovak customers are using web shops as rental shops just to rent something for 2 weeks. And then we must do a full refund. This doesn't exist in Germany, for example. In Germany, we are refunding them 80, 85%, 90%, depending on how much the product was actually used. In Slovakia, we could never do this, and we would be killed by the Slovak trade inspection. So, I think from the European Commission, there should come regulation how to unify this. So the trade inspections in each member state countries, they cannot do what they want. So.
In Slovakia, especially as we see it and we have experience with this, the Slovak Trade Commission is not just taking care of the things that some businesses actually were mean towards customer. They go after your trade terms and are like, okay, this word doesn't belong here, you're fine. And you've never exploited it, you just have that word in there. And you're like, okay, this is not according to law, so we are going to fine.
May I jump into this? Exactly the good point says that solutions to local problems are not national. I could have sympathy with the customer protection was a big issue 10 years ago, and there was a team at the head of the agency that really in small countries will not prove themselves. They already postponed legislation and they public calls. And this is very and now it's time to repeat their success. And so I would be optimistic into really using the enthusiasm that is here. Peter described the opportunities down there and also the political time. Now, digital single market will be one of the top priorities of the Commission. Commission is going to come with a program in 3 weeks. I think there's a signal that the responsibility, the portfolio of digital single market went to the German Commission. And it's connected to many things. Germany is aware of how we stand globally. We are losing our position as Europe. And second thing is that there are elections in this country in February 2016, and the whole 2015 will be, the political development will be shaped by considerations that there are elections coming, and all political parties in parliament will compete for young votes. It is excellent stuff. Number two, specific position of Slovakia and Bratislava is that we have Austria behind the border. Huge market, more developed, the digital market, and try to order something from e-shop. Just to order, we experienced with our Austrian partner in one project, and we tried to order a taxi to not village. Even that simple thing, ordering a taxi and selling a taxi 5 kilometers across the border, is difficulty because some of them are very careful about what they insurance ready. And it's just absolute 10 years after our membership in the EU. Two markets of Bratislava and Vienna are not the physical markets are not interconnected. Now, one anecdote from my family: I have a 3-year-old son, and he loves trade commerce. The best thing you can do is to order trade commerce parts from not here, because I think the business is still behind the market, behind the customer demand. But order it from England or from Germany. We have to use our family connections, so it's bought to Amazon in Germany and sent to us as a postal in 1 week, which is absurd. And again, it shows you the political position of Slovakia in the middle of a wider region, V4, it's called. We are really physically in the middle. We are neighboring Europe, so we could get used to that. Hungarian sort of market and offer there, with Austrian, in this agglomeration of Bratislava. This is critical to get that right. And again, we have elections coming, 2016. This should be high on the agenda, so whoever forms the government will be pushed to have this on their priorities to get done next year.
Can I make an observation? I think a couple of thoughts come out of it, and I think going back to this kind of the comparison between e-retailers and physical retailers, I think we would have a very different discussion if we had some physical retailers that would say actually.
Well, actually, I most we have t-shirts and
so clicks and bricks. So I know when we talk to our retail sector, they say, these e-commerce people, they have it easy. They don't have to deal with local authority, value rules. They don't have to deal with staff rules in the same way and so on. So I think there is a question about how can you make sure that physical retail can compete on a level playing field.
I see them on both shares. Part of our revenues come from the stores, and the stores come from internet. And we started as using something like that in the stores. And really, there's no difference. And yes, you don't have as many people, but you have to take care of your warehouses and so on. So I can see both sides really here.
Yeah.
And we don't see almost no regulation in the physical stores, not as much as we see in the e-commerce stores. So.
Interesting. And I think what comes out of that is that if we look at e-commerce across the whole of the EU, we do not have a single market in e-commerce. Actually, in fact, it's 28 national markets. There are still national markets for a variety of reasons, partly language, culture, tradition, but also there are some very clear market barriers. I think in the second section we'll get into some of those barriers in detail, but we still have 28 national markets. Or actually probably less, because I think here's an interesting point, which is that actually some markets are large and well developed. Other markets are quite small and therefore less attractive for people to go into, and therefore to what extent do you get actually a dominant market in a neighbouring country that actually then spawns kind of sub-markets that come out of it. I think you can see that in the Baltic region, you can see that. The other interesting thing was the role of the market versus the role of government in terms of consumer protection. And one thing that we found interesting is that certainly in the UK, our consumer regulation doesn't really affect e-commerce because the market gives much higher protections than legally they're required to. And actually consumer expectation and competitive advantage between e-retailers is driving a higher level of consumer protection than legal minimum. So actually, we could change the law and it wouldn't make any difference because actually people are already offering a much higher level of consumer protection. So for example, returning goods within the UK law, I think, you can only return goods if they're faulty or not suitable. However, most companies offer just free returns for the sake of free returns. So there is a question here that actually we just need to be honest and say part of this is about the market and how the market higher degree of consumer protection and fueling expectations in consumers about what they can do, rather than actually government being able to regulate that. Actually, government regulations quite often lower protection than market regulation.
Interesting observation that you're educating the consumer and the retailers, and that they are basically self-regulated. Regulation from government.
Well, the regulation is there to set a floor,
yeah.
But what we're finding, as you'd expect, is the market to operate at a high level. And there's an interesting question that says that there's always a risk reward here that says, would I be willing to pay a lower price to get a lower level of customer service? And at the moment, we're not seeing that. At the moment, we're seeing the competition being on price, but not on customer service. And maybe this is where cross-border comes in. Actually, if you want to take a risk, and you can have very low levels of cross-border e-commerce with second session. If I'm willing to take a risk on consumer protection, can I get a lower price? Whereas at the moment, it seems to be there isn't really competition for customer service. The competition is actually just for price.
If I may have one comment on this, and I give the here. I'm wondering about the cultural difference, about the level. I would be interested, or I don't know if you know, what are the levels of misuse? I mean, maybe the people in the UK are not misusing this kind of opportunity or benefit they're getting from their the providers, whereas here, living here, knowing the culture, people, and the culture and the long-term legacy of, we know everyone.
We have free refills in America for the code, so they had it here like 15 years ago. They tried it, but they stopped like after people came to the bubbles. Literally all the time because they bought one.
Yeah, I'm not telling this is not impossible, but I would see that probably the kind of culture, consumer culture or level of awareness is probably much higher than in Central Europe. I don't know whether you agree or that's false
But maybe that's why Peter's idea on competition would be good, that maybe Slovaks would be willing to have less consumer protection when they pay lower price. So this was actually an interesting comment which maybe one year, that they will not be able to return goods within 40 days, but they will pay less for it. So
it's an interesting question. I know that the Commission is starting to think about some of these kind of questions about what are the minimum consumer protections that are fundamental, and then actually where does the market go above that. And I think we've seen in the UK kind of a revolution in food retail with the arrival of the large German discounters, really the last 2 or 3 years. That's completely upset the business model, because the business model before, four main supermarkets, there was no difference between them. They were pretty much the same offering. And all of a sudden, you've got someone coming in and saying, we're not going to have so nice stores, we're not going to have all fancy technology, we're just going to not have the huge range, but you're going to see the benefit in price. And I just wonder whether we are all, where are the Aldis and Lidls online going to come that are actually saying, we can see there's a price advantage here by not offering the free refunds and the free service and the free delivery and the free this. But actually they're going to compete purely on price. I don't know if the market will develop
Mm-hmm. I missed a bit of the discussion, so I would like to just welcome Mr. Papias from the Ministry of Economy. We were just discussing about the general digital single market and the key steps to actually achieving it somehow. So I think Michal had some questions about what are your ideas about consumer protection. I believe so.
Yes, I mean, there is a white program right now, so and just jumping ship. Sorry, jumping into. And yeah, we were discussing about the differences with the countries, and also the level of protection of the customer in e-commerce space as compared to just normal retail. We've seen that in e-commerce space is way higher than retail, and especially the Slovak agency. So it is, I don't think it's just protecting the customer there. I have to say, valid e-commerce companies sometimes, because they don't come with okay, you misused or misbehaved or did something wrong to the customer. You just have these two words wrong in your terms. You never use them when you're wrong, so we are fine. And it's my personal experience. So.
Just coming from maybe more governmental perspective, and my personal one as well. Myself, sorry, my name is Lisa. I will have to introduce myself to many of you, but I'm from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from the Office of State Secretary, which is responsible for EU affairs, mostly. We're quite having interesting discussions about EU regulation, etc. And the media commissioner, Franz Timmermans, having some expectations about the new commission and whether they would be ready, more willing to deal with less regulation than before. But I think that comes in the right time, as the digital single market cannot be created having every country its own legislation, obviously. But we're doing it actually. So we're trying to force different kinds of legislation in every country, and that makes it very difficult for the Commission as well, and for us among ourselves to have some cross-border interactions and common level playing field with consumers of all other countries. So I think one of the responses or problems that can be addressed be that Commission could be like someone who just can set minimum standards for all countries in the EU, and just national governments would give up this opportunity to regulate all different kinds of levels in the e-commerce business, and just agree with the Commission on what is really the lowest standard that you need to provide, and then just do it in all 28. And then each country can, as you said, within the UK, and I'm sure every country would do something more than its the minimum standard set by the Commission. So it's maybe the problem that really each government, from a traditional perspective, wants to regulate, and they don't understand really that much that there's a supranational or an EU level, which has to be really more involved in the legislation making and decisions than has been in the past 20, 30 years ago. So that's just my comment and question.
And my
change of
my observation there, and there's an interesting question: why is there so much national regulation of consumer protection? Well, it's practical politics. It's votes. You know, actually, no one loses votes by increasing consumer protection. You know, it's kind of a fundamental rule. And therefore, the challenge is that even if you harmonise regulations, consumer protection regulations, there will always be a pressure in national governments to go further and move it up, because it is about no one wants to have unsafe toys on sale, no one wants to have people being injured, etc., etc. So there is also a practical politics here that says consumer protection will always be very sensitive to the issue. It goes straight into domestic politics. And in some ways that's where you need European action to almost arguably to try and constrain some of those political forces that otherwise will end up fragmenting the single market by having different national protections.
maybe even if you the governments think that it's their responsibility, of course, to protect consumers. But I think if you can find a model which would be interesting for businesses to defend consumers' rights, and at the same time favorable for consumers to get their rights from the businesses, there is a way beneficial for both sides. But I'm not sure if the European Commission really tries to look at both angles. Maybe they are sometimes too much interested in consumers protection, because I think that businesses would deal with that somehow. They are businesses, so they will find the ways. But maybe to change that setting, that we're looking for solutions that would be beneficial for both sides. And I know there is an initiative that's actually sort of company called Use This. I don't know whether you've heard about it, but they try to, they came up with an application, an app, which is in Apple Store and wherever available for all business companies. And the main aim is to you track down to the application. You put it on your website if you're a business company, wherever in the world you are, doesn't matter. And the main idea is to have some standards for settling disputes in case you have some trouble with the delivery or with your food, etc. It's available in many different languages because it's an automatic formula, and it works very well because it's really automatic, so you don't need to fill in a lot of stuff if you have trouble. It makes it very easy for customers to use it, and it makes it very easy for businesses to really use that app. And it's beneficial for both because they see it makes them more valuable for customers and consumers, that they have some kind of protection. They know it works. They have like a guarantee that at the end, in a month, they will have the final answer, whether they can get their money back or they will get refund, etc. So it has very transparent rules and can work worldwide. It's not like just a matter of the EU single market. So maybe some policies could be even dealt with within businesses or in cooperation with business, finding solutions.
What's the name of the application?
Use This.
Maybe one more point for I think we need was regulation and was protection. Actually, there's very strong price comparison engine in Slovakia, which most of the consumers actually use before they start shopping online. And all of them have their own service to evaluate the merchants. They're getting reviews after the consumers buy goods online, and so actually the customers decide which merchant will do well on the market with the people reviews. So maybe that's also the point of view that there's maybe just let the customers decide who's gonna do well.
Bring in again the V4 level, regional level, and then the EU level, because this is where interesting things are happening now. You mentioned that the European Commission wants to come up with new proposals for digital CEPI by March 2020. Now, I think it's very important for the V4 to, number one, be part of the discussion. This is where we can partner with you, and thanks for coming to actually to help us to move forward to that discussion. We're starting the momentum here is very fast, but we have a responsibility to our regional presidency, we should have to coordinate so on the level of digital investments, make sure that we are part of the discussion. Now, next week, we are going to meet a small group of MEPs, members of the European Parliament and the V4. We will offer them, based on an open letter that we go out to the three presidents of the institution, we will offer them a menu of 5-6 topics that we think are common to the region and are also overlapping with the priorities of the Commission. One of them is digital agenda in the single market. We very much hope that we offer for them the implementation pick 3. We will turn it into a flagship, and in the course of the next year, we will try to help them in more activities. Now, they are starting with the single market. the flagships. And then what needs to be done is that where things are shaped on the new level, investments, on council level, there is the commission, and then the European Parliament, we have what? The experience of this is that the EU legislation sometimes helps us is saving us from not having enough developed domestic legislation. Especially, this is such a great case study because we have advantages due to the fact that there is mobile, we are being new country and dynamic country is an advantage as opposed to so much some programs that were growth in the telecom market is not so. I see a lot of work here to coordinate, and this is not only there will be a button passed from the Slovak Czech presidency in the summer, and this could encompass the next few years with tremendous benefits for both business here and for customers. If it is explained smart and is picked up also by politicians. Last point is that it's great to hear from you how difficult it is to organize government. Dan Barta, who's heading our program from the came up with a paper in June on digital data. So what should be, where we should start to coordinate on the level of V4, knowing that each of our countries perform a small market and distance is not interesting. Or interesting for investors, even for us, we should start coordinating very low. And first point is that we have to address basic concepts. They are hard to find and then they are organized, even within people categories. So there was supposed to be a meeting on the level of several line industries to actually sort out who is the leader in Bratislava, and we hope they will have the overlap also to the digital presidency. So that industry will then also take the lead to organize the whole group in Brussels. Nobody knows the details, so, but I think the good thing is that this is the right one.
Actually, during the process of discussing whether exactly what you've been coming through, what should be the foreign ministry responsible for digital agenda, which is so far shared among almost everyone, or create kind of a steering committee or working with a task force that would meet once in a month to at least know what the others are doing and try to coordinate efforts into certain goals. That is very, very hard. It's very hard. And it all comes from the definition. We can start to define what we want to do, what priorities, what decisions in the market are taking into account all ministries. And then maybe it make much more obvious where we want to go and what are we able to promote at the European level and in the region. Yeah, just really at the beginning.
And it doesn't get much easier. That's also good to know. 2 years down the line, we have now created a digital task force, which has some seniors on it. It has decision-making power, so it's like a cabinet committee. But it has been a difficult process. And probably the most useful step we took was to take a paper to our ministerial cabinet, particularly on European affairs. We have a European affairs committee of our government. We took a paper there that said, these are the priorities. And that was quite important to get that agreement across government what we care I should also say, we can talk about the digital single market. There is also kind of a hard agenda, which is the security agenda that we haven't really touched on. It's a whole cybersecurity agenda, and some of the issues around data protection, which I think have become more difficult, particularly post-Snowden. I think you could argue that Commissioner Oettinger being given the digital portfolio may reflect more actually where the agenda may go in the future, which is less towards liberalising on e-commerce and more to regulating on data and security and cybersecurity. And I think that's the challenge. How do we keep the right level of focus on that agenda, which is a very important agenda, particularly in the light of recent Russian actions. But on the other hand, how do we make sure that actually there is still a champion of e-commerce? Because the default reaction will be to regulate, shut everything down, claim security, and therefore do it. So that's part of the challenge, I think. But for us, a key way forward for us was actually getting that cross-government agreement. These are the issues that we care about in the press, and then separating off the cybersecurity agenda. We're continuing to focus on the cybersecurity agenda, but we're not going to lump it, combine it with e-commerce and the other areas of the digital economy.
Are there any other comments? I maybe want to ask you about, since you're sitting here in Slovakia, you're currently working on new copyright law. Do you have experience with copyright law within the digital single market? Did you decide which way to go? Because I know that yours is quite liberal.
It is, but it's a very sensitive area. And how do you strike the right balance between the rights of copyright holders, copyright producers, and then copyright users? So there is a distinction. What we've seen in the UK is quite often copyright holders will buy the rights of the producers. So quite often the copyright debate is seen as this two balancing interests. On the one hand, those who hold the copyright and those who exploit it. It's a bit more complex than that. So we see actually quite often small copyright producers, people who creative industries, who then sell their rights to a larger company, and they're the ones who are quite keen to kind of guard their interests. The area we've looked at, and we've looked at two areas. One has been around exceptions. So how can you create exceptions in your copyright regime for non-commercial use? So how can academic institutions and so on get access to copyrighted material? The other area that I think is interesting is around digital rights. And it really, coming back to e-commerce, it's the question of what are your digital rights? When you download a track off iTunes or whatever, what are your rights around that downloaded track? Have you bought a license to use it on one device, or have you bought it as a digital good that you can then use on any of your devices? And that's the area that we've focused on in particular. It's been less politically sensitive because it's not this battle between liberal and rights. It's more about just giving some clarity to the market that says when you buy something, what are your rights around buying that digital download? Are you allowed to use it on different devices? Can you then give it to other people? Are the rights transferable? And so on. I think as the market for digital products develops, you can't have a system where you have one set of rights for physical goods and services and a different set of rights for digital goods and services. So I think there is a challenge there, and certainly in the UK the system, there was a gap that we've now been looking to fill around what the digital rights are.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if there's no comments or questions, we can take a short break, maybe 5 to minutes, and then we can start the session 2, where we go into more practical questions and experiences. You're happy to do so? Great. So please help yourself with drinks and food. We have plenty. And we'll continue in 5 minutes. Okay? Thank you very much.
Nie, bo tylko stopniesz, tak co to upłynie. To są bardzo
Będę pauzu wykordowaną. Nie klikali mikrofony kiedyś, ale nie zobaczyłem raz, będzie nam klikali. No.
Když zareaguji. Czy zareagujesz? No.
Tak myslím, akože, že vyššie. Ako keby. Alebo, dobre, ale tak stále sa rieši to v Európskom parlamente, predpokladám. Co to robí komisia? To sa robí na komisii. Okay. Alebo teda, pardon, na komisii sa robia revízie tých smerníc, ale rada to robí, akože, to znamená, členské štáty samotné.
Na SAPIE Facebooku je linka.
Dobre, napríklad v tomto má Slovensko, keď sa napríklad takáto legislatíva európska rieši, Slovensko tam má nejaké slovo. Priznám sa, že nevyznám sa v európskych.
No, tam sa hlasuje, každý štát má jeden hlas. Tam sa hlasuje o znení smernice. Nadpolovičnou väčšinou, myslím, že v rámci toho výboru, ktorý sa podieľa na tvorbe tej smernice, tak tam sú vlastne štáty tam častokrát rôzne názorové prúdy, potom tie názorové prúdy sa zjednocujú a stoja ako nejaké skupiny, povedzme niečo presadzujú a niečo podobné, takže jedine z tohto hľadiska. Samozrejme, ako štát máme nejaké veľmi prínosné, to by sa malo osvojiť. Pokiaľ tam nie sú nejaké lobistické tlaky, ale zvyčajne nie sú. Ale teda tejto ochrany spotrebiteľa sa nejako nepúšťajú tie lobistické tlaky. Inak by sme to nemali.
Ja my sa nepoznáme ešte tiež, som Mišpel. Rajzmania. Zaujímavá diskusia zatiaľ. Máte celkom ťažké teraz sa zapojiť, nie? Tak to narýchlo?
Áno.
Čo sa riešilo?
Je to ako, predpokladal som, že budú takéto podnety, že na adresu tej ochrany spotrebiteľa, ale ako hovorím, ja nemám veľký manevrovací priestor na to, aby sme ešte niečo sa vyjadrovali, alebo čo podobné.
Či by ste reálne riešili aj tú legislatívu, čo bola v júni prijatá, či to nie?
Ten zákon, ako zákon sme to robili, ale smernica bola prijatá ešte pred rokom 2011. No, akože vtedy sa nepracoval, 2011 bola prijatá.
Tam najviac prišla taká vtipná jedna vec, čo sa týka e-shopov, bolo to tlačidlo.
Áno, objednávka s možnosťou platu.
Som sa smial, keď som to videl a to teraz sa akože niekto vymyslí.
Ono to je za účelom toho, že boli tzv. Internetové pasy, aj pred 5 rokmi to bolo na prokuratúre, tie básničky na internete, že ľudia to odklikávali a faktúry a vlastne tí podvodníci to preukazovali, že to odstupli, ale ľudia si neboli vedomí toho, že je to platené. Takže za účelom toho.
Shall we start or one more minute? Would you like to finish your sandwich? We can chill.
This is good. I went out for dinner last night. I was still full first thing this morning from dinner last night. So
That's good.
It's not good if I go back weighing half a kilo heavier after.
Don't worry, they will not weigh you up
at the airport. Yeah.
No, but my wife will when I get home. What were you eating?
Central Europe is a good excuse.
It's a very good excuse. It was superb food.
Brilliant. So
And that really has been kind of the foundation of the work that we've done since then, in terms of giving us a framework to understand what the issues are, and then some very specific examples from businesses over what the issues are. We are now working with, I think it's about 6 or 7 other member states to do an e-commerce audit, where as part of, we have a like-minded group of 16 member states that look at competitiveness and growth and single market issues, which includes the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Poland. Although I don't think any of those are part of this particular project. It's called a Frontrunners project, which is administrative cooperation. And in particular, we are looking at e-commerce in each of our member states and looking at some of the key factors and really trying to see where there are differences. So we're looking at things like tax, how tax is treated, consumer protection, how you like to pay is proving to be a huge issue. Parcel services. So we're looking at a variety of different issues, really to see if we can understand what each national market looks like. So going back to the observation that we have 28 national e-commerce markets, if we can understand what the particular conditions of each national market is, we can then look at what the barriers are, where the differences are in terms of going cross-border. And that work is ongoing, and I'll talk about some of the things that we found in a minute. I did want to say, just by way of introduction, a couple of things about why e-commerce works and why it is important. And I think really we've identified kind of 3 real drivers behind e-commerce and why we think it matters. The first is obviously one that is economic. So there is money to be had. Consumers stand to gain 11.7 billion euros actually if the full range of goods and services are available throughout the EU. So actually there are some big numbers that are attached to this. So there's an economic reason. To be frank, there's a geopolitical reason. If the EU doesn't get its act together, the US will dominate. And you could argue we're already starting to see that. And thirdly, I think there is a political issue here and a political imperative. The lesson of the past year, if I look at 2014, in Europe, the lesson I think has been that Europe's citizens are disenchanted with the European project. We saw that in European elections. I don't know how it worked in Slovakia, but in the UK, it was not a pleasant experience.
Well, the lowest turnout here.
Lowest turnout. Well, we had a nice high turnout, but they all voted for Eurosceptic parties. So.
What's better?
And that yeah, what's better? And that I think was the same across the whole of the EU, because Europe is being associated with austerity, which is being associated with pain. And actually, e-commerce is one way that you can show a direct benefit for citizens from the single market, because quite often the single market still feels too far away from people. People don't think when they jump in their car and they've got their fantastic car built in Slovakia, although I will say that actually British car industry produces wonderful cars, and the Nissan Qashqai has just produced its 2 millionth car in the UK. So there we go, we can have a discussion about car industries. But they don't sit there and think, wow, I am driving an embodiment of the single market. They just think I'm driving a Japanese car. So e-commerce is actually one way that you can directly bring the benefits of European Union membership direct into the citizens' household, when they realise, yes, I'm getting a better range of goods and services. And I think that particularly applies for smaller markets where you might have less of a direct indigenous industry, and actually you can show the benefits. So e-commerce really matters, and it really matters not just because of the economic benefits, but actually the symbolism and the extent to which it is the single market embodied for citizens. But what we've looked at is that actually there isn't a single bullet. There isn't a single magic bullet that will solve the issues. But what we've done is we've tried to break it down into 2 dimensions. One is to look at the demand side and to look at consumers, and the other is the supply side and to look at the retailers from that perspective. And actually, the report of our e-commerce task force that sadly never got published, and there's a long story about that I won't bore you with, was called Empowered Consumers and Unleashed Business, because we saw these two dimensions that need to be played out. In terms of consumers then, how do you build consumer confidence? How do you generate the demand from consumers for goods and services online? And there was a survey done in 2011 of 30,000 EU consumers that identified some of the concerns that they had with buying online and buying online cross-border. 35% of people said it was long delivery times, 34% said it was problems with returning products, others said it was all about being unable to return faulty goods. So I think we've seen a few key issues. It was really interesting. I went to it was earlier this year, I went to speak at an e-commerce event in Romania. And I found that really eye-opening. One, because they are leapfrogging over physical broadband. So they are going from no broadband to mobile broadband, and they just won't have a fibre optic or a copper wire internet system. They're just going straight to mobile. The other issue, which I think is also common in Slovakia as well, is everything is on cash on delivery, which for me was kind of coming from the UK, where everyone uses their cards and you cannot pay cash on delivery. Everything is cash on delivery. And I asked, why is it on cash on delivery? And they said, we Romanians, we do not trust anyone with our money. So until I have the goods in my hand, I am not giving you any money. And so the first issue I think that we need to address is kind of this fear of fraud. How do you make sure that when you pay for something online, you get it? And particularly then, how do you cope with national preferences for different ways of paying, whether it's cash on delivery or payment upfront?
If I may on this, I completely agree. It's like 30% of people only pay in advance, 70% pay cash on delivery. But I don't think that's anymore because of fear. It's just cultural thing. It transformed into cultural thing that you just got used to it.
Yeah.
You don't know why. We even give discounts for paying before. Nobody cares. I mean, in like 5 years, we were not able to raise the percentage even by 1%. And people, according to some studies, are like 95% in Slovakia of customers buying online. 95% of them are extremely happy or happy with the service the e-shops are providing. It's not the trust issue anymore. Yeah, it's culture issue.
If I may, one thing on that from another country, and I'm sure some of you covered this country, it's Hungary. Cash on delivery versus banking payment. Because of developing bank taxes in a way that we developed, actually it's free to get cash twice a month. But if you pay online, that involves a banking cost. So actually it's cheaper in Hungary to pay by cash. Which means that it doesn't really help to improve business in this sense and educate people. Although now there is a new law that will change that most probably, but for at least for a year or a bit more, that was the major rule, that it was better for me to withdraw the cash and then pay than just pay online, which doesn't really help the e-business.
The issue is it's not that one is better than the other. It's just the simple observation that if I am a small UK-based retailer. So we had one member of our e-commerce task force, really interesting case study. So it was a woman who, in her spare time, started doing personalised labels to stick in your children's school books. And she started in her spare room, just producing these on and sending them out. And then one day she got an email from Germany saying, "Can you do?" And so she just suddenly had to do this cross-border. For her, how would she cope with cash on delivery? So she suddenly got an email that came in from Bratislava saying, "I've seen your product online, fantastic, please can you do me a set of personalised labels for my son Milan, the initial reaction will be, great, give us your credit card details, and someone will go, I don't think so. So straight away, there's a barrier there. So I just kind of flagged that as a barrier. Next barrier, I think, is around delivery times and the ability to predict. And particularly if we go back to this issue of, it may be less of an issue in Slovakia, it's certainly an issue for me as I'm spending my money online, is if I paid the money out, I want to know when I'm going to get my goods. And particularly if I might have to stay at home to wait for the delivery, I want to know when I'm getting it. If I order in my national country, I might get an email that says, here is a tracking code, you can have it in 24 hours. If I buy it cross-border, 3 to 6 weeks. That's just not good.
I think it comes with price, and that's the bigger problem. Not you can get it from UK to Slovakia in 2 or 3 days from Amazon.
Yeah, and if I'm willing to pay.
Yeah. Well, yes, but even if we wanted to use the same shipping method from Slovakia to UK, we are not able to get those prices from the delivery guys. And so that's the point.
Absolutely. So there's a whole bunch of issues here around the delivery times, the ability to track, and the level of service that you get for the money you're willing to pay. There's issues around data protection. You know, if I'm entering my credit card details or my personal details, I'm very happy to do it in a UK website. I may be less happy to do it in Romanian, Bulgarian. That's just other member states. You just kind of, it feels even further out of control. I don't know what's going to happen to my personal details. And certainly entering my credit card details at the moment, all our messaging is don't enter your credit card details into funny websites. And then all of a sudden we're saying, enter your... So there are just issues there about data protection. And then you've got the whole issue of what if it goes wrong? What if the goods don't turn up? Am I going to have to phone a phone number in another member state who don't speak English and explain my problem? And then how are they going to get the money to me and all the rest of it? So all of those are kind of from a consumer perspective, some of the barriers that exist between those national e-commerce markets. If we then have a look at kind of the retailer perspective, there was a survey done in 2012 of 10,000 retailers. They said 41% said actually the biggest barrier was different consumer protection rules. Discussion we've already touched on. 41% fraud and non-payment. The point you were going to make about rental company. I'm now going to buy all my goods from Slovakia, I think. I can just borrow them and send them back. 36% higher delivery. I know people who have done that. I caught my own son trying to do it one day. He said, I'm going to a party. I want to order a T-shirt and then I'll take it back the next day. I was like, no, you are not. But that's there. 36% higher delivery costs, 36% compliance with different tax regimes. So those are kind of some of the issues that we see. And then finally, a kind of a final barrier to kind of flag is that actually, I'm very conscious that the UK has got quite a large national market, and other large member states have large national markets. What I hear is that actually you don't have the same level of goods and services that are available in other member states because the market is seen as less attractive. And a final observation I would add is actually around awareness. Going back to the consumers, I was really encouraged to hear that actually you've got a lot of price comparison websites within Slovakia. Within the UK, we don't. We do have one or two. I have one called Kelku, one called Price Runner, but actually most people do price comparison through Amazon. I think the statistic that came out of the task force was 80% of all e-commerce transactions in the UK start in Amazon. And that's just a huge market concentration. But even if I wanted to buy cross-border, so we're getting towards Christmas, everyone knows that the best place to buy kind of Christmas decorations is not in the UK, it's going to be from Austria, Slovakia, Czech Republic. Get some innovative things to hang on your Christmas tree. How on earth would I do that? How would I find, as a consumer, the possibility of getting something authentic, handicrafty from somewhere else? The answer is I have no idea where to start. You know, I'd probably go into Google and type in handicraft Christmas tree decorations and see what I got. So there's a real issue about, is there a marketplace anyway where people who have got the appetite to buy cross-border can actually find an offering from another member state? And as part of our e-commerce task force, we talked to the guys like Google and Bing, and they said, look, actually our whole algorithm is to generate local hits, not distance hits. So you type in to buy something, we will show you within the nearest 20 kilometers. We certainly won't show you cross-border. We had a discussion with price comparison websites to say, why don't you have cross-border offers on your website? They said, because the people who get the benefit of that is the consumer, and actually our whole business model is built on selling traffic. So actually we sell advertising, you know, as a price comparison website. We are not the consumer's friend, actually. I mean, they didn't say it in so many words. But their business model is about selling internet traffic to the retailer, not for the consumer benefit. So there's a genuine question, which is, if I'm up to go cross-border, I just wouldn't know how to do it. So I think we've kind of looked at kind of 7 concrete actions that we think needs to take place to address some of these barriers. We're just working on a non-paper on the digital single market. It's got a section on e-commerce. We're hoping to kind of publish it in the next month or so, but here is a sneak preview of what the 7 things that we think a new commission needs to prioritise. The first is around harmonised consumer rights for digital goods, and we talked about that earlier on. So just making it clear what your rights around digital content. I think in due course, there is probably going to be a good argument for extending that harmonised approach across the board. But if anyone who's dealt with the Consumer Rights Directive or the Common European Sales Law negotiations know politically that it's just really difficult. But we think there's a gap there on digital. We do think there's an issue around improving enforcement of existing EU consumer rules. And it was interesting the discussion you had about your trade commission. In the UK, we don't have anything like that. We have a kind of completely different enforcement model. That's not saying that we all have to have the same enforcement model, but actually a key thing to consumer confidence will be the sense that there is some consumer protections that are enforced effectively, so that if I'm buying something from another member state, that actually it is safe, it is appropriate, it's fit for purpose, and having that confidence in enforcement. Third area is around national sales promotion rules and trying to remove national sales promotion rules. So the example that we had was from a very large British retailer, which is viewed as quintessentially British. They said that if they wanted to sell, our busiest trading day in the UK is Boxing Day. So the day after Christmas, 26th of December, is our biggest trading day. So you have, you might have Black Monday or whatever, but we have Boxing Day, and that is the big day for sales. However, in France, they have national sales laws which say any sales promotion is banned on the 26th of December. So if you are operating a pan-European website, you've got to have a separate website for the UK to sell everything cheap on the 26th of December, and a separate website for France where you have to have the same prices on the 26th of December, which straight away is cost, and you straight away say, well, why do I bother with that market? So there are different sales promotion rules.
And if I just may say, add to this about the books, for example, in France, I think you are not allowed to sell books at a discount.
I've got a great example from the German ones are even better. Okay. So that there's a German net book agreement. That means you can't sell books in Germany below a certain price. However, you can buy English language books from Amazon.co.uk and get them shipped to Germany, and you don't have to pay the German net book agreement. However, if the language of the book is German and you are buying it from Amazon.co.uk, the German net book agreement applies. So straight away there you've kind of got, and if you're Amazon, you've got to work your way around that actually this book is in English, fine, I can flog it as cheap as I want. Oh, this book is in German, oh dear, I need to find out what the price is. So straight away you have some of those issues. Again, picking Germany as an example, Under German law, it is illegal to sell things below cost price. And yet in the UK, one of the most popular promotions we do is what's called bog off, which is buy one, get one free. That is illegal in Germany because one of them is being sold for free. So therefore it is illegal. So straight away, all of those basically mean that you have different national sales promotion laws that actually mean you cannot operate a pan-European website. You have to have a different website for different markets, which just adds to the costs. Fourth issue that we believe there's some concrete action is around geo-pricing, where actually you have different prices that apply according to where your IP address is or your geographical location. So that if your market is less attractive because of size or whatever reason, then actually the prices go up. And we think that
will be one more reason prices will vary, and it's most one-stop shop. Because I mean, you want to your buying prices without VAT, and as VAT rates are different in every country, that means different end prices for customers. And this is a huge problem. For example, for us, we are selling ebooks. From 1st of January, we are temporarily banning selling ebooks outside from Slovakia and Czech Republic, where we are present, because we don't know yet how to, handle the prices, and so on. So we would have to create different websites or different price lists based on where are you from. I'm not really sure how small companies are going to do this, and this is the biggest problem of the expansion of e-commerce, of growth of e-commerce, because it's mainly based on small retailers in most countries, and I don't see anybody willing to selling digital goods now having to set up different price list for 28 countries if he wants to start his little startup selling the digital goods. Wow.
It's really a huge problem. Yeah.
It is.
We are fighting with this problem as well. We had to set up special web shops for Hungary because of the 27% VAT, and we are doing special price lists in Croatia, and there is also a different VAT. I think it's 25%. So we have special prices for Croatia, for Romania as well. And then we have Slovakia, Czech Republic with somehow similar price lists. So the only thing how you can do this is to set up special web shops for each country. So you cannot have just one unified web shop.
Which is straight away is a barrier between the national markets. Fifth issue we've kind of identified is around single market in parcels, and actually we think there needs to be some kind of action, single market in parcels. It was really interesting yesterday. We arrived in Vienna and drove across the border straight through 30 minutes, and we're here in Bratislava, and the price very reasonable. However, if we were a parcel, we probably would have paid double the price just because we crossed the border. So straight away, you have issues where it is half the price to send a parcel 100 kilometers within the country than 100 kilometers if it just crosses a border. Why is that? Nowadays, there is no cost in crossing the border. You just drive your truck through the border. So anyway, there's just something that kind of, there needs to be some action around that. Sixth issue we've identified is around actually making it easy to establish businesses online and do all of the kind of transactions that they need with government online. So within the UK, we've been going through a process of digital by default, which is not easy, and it's a long-term program, but we're getting there so that you can now do your company tax returns, you can now do your filing of accounts and apply for all your licenses and authorizations online. You can set up a business online. You don't have to send any documents in at all.
If you may explain what's the digital by default.
Digital default means that all transactions between the citizen or businesses and government, the assumption is that you will be able to do them entirely by digital, and that actually increasingly there will not be the opportunity to do things in a different way. So, for example, all our company taxes you can only do online now. So you can't fill in the form anymore and send it off. That's the way it's going to go, that all of our government services will be done, and all the transactions between government and citizen will be digital. automatically. And then the final issue that we've identified has been around top-level domain names. So your ability to get a .de or .fr domain name, we believe they need to be kind of available across the EU. At the moment, if you want to get a .fr domain name, and this is important because actually consumers trust a domain name from their own member state more than they would from another member state. If you want to get, say, .fr, you either need to have a physical legal entity in that member state, or you have to lie when you kind of go online to say, yes, I have got or you have to pay an agent to do that for you. And I think we just say, if you've got a single market, actually it should be available across the EU that you can establish in a different member state. So those are kind of 7 kind of concrete actions that we think the Commission and the EU could take immediately. So consumer rights for digital content, enforcement of consumer rules, national sales promotion rules, geo-pricing, single market and parcels, electronic establishment of businesses, and top-level domain names. Sorry, I've spoken too long.
No, perfect. Thank you very much. Do you have any comments? Do you want to go from, one point after the other, or do you have any general points about this one? No?
Which one will be the first point?
So we were looking at, I think, the couple of issues that were there. From the e-commerce audit, we were looking at tax and we touched on VAT, and I think that was one of the things that you both mentioned. So do you want to comment on that any more?
Go ahead. So we have experience with doing VAT registrations in 5 countries here in Eastern Europe, and I think that it is a huge problem because it's not unified. So each country regulates the process as it wants to, and so, for example, from my perspective now, I can say where it was quite easy, where it was very complicated. The best country to do the VAT registration for a foreign company, because we wanted to register our German company, was Slovakia. Yeah, so it was very fast. It took us 10 days.
Right answer.
Yeah. It took us 10 days. We got a VAT, VAT number. Then the other 3 countries, there were somewhere or 4 countries in between, and the worst country was Hungary. We had a terrible, really terrible experience in Hungary because we were told when we applied for the VAT number, we applied for the numbers in December. And they told us, okay, they are doing the VAT registration just once a year, and for foreign companies, And the last registration round was like 2 months ago, so we need to wait. Yeah. So, and imagine it was really bad because we couldn't pay this VAT in Germany or in Slovakia. So we had to build reserves of several 100,000 euros just the VAT money we wanted to pay to the Hungarian tax authorities, but we couldn't because they didn't want to give us the VAT number. And then we had also quite a bit experience in Romania, where they were quite fast, but they wanted us to provide them a Romanian address, a seat of the company. But we said, okay, we don't have a Romanian seat. And they said, okay, we don't care, you must have one, because otherwise you cannot fill the form. And we are not going to give you the VAT number. So we had to buy a letterbox in Bucharest just in order to obtain the VAT registration. Just to summarize it, I think from the point of view of European Commission, this should be unified. The process, how the member state tax authorities are doing the VAT registrations. Another problem, a tax problem, is in Slovakia. We have these summary reports, súhrnný výkaz in Slovak. Yeah. So for our English friends, just to explain it, it's a report you have to provide to the local tax authority. It's a list of all invoices that where VAT is applicable, and you have to provide this list to the tax authority each month. So they can do cross-examination between the VAT subjects. And we have a German invoicing system, And our German invoicing system doesn't know anything about summary reports. So we are experiencing really huge problems with providing the Slovak tax authorities with something like this. So we need to build the list on ourselves, but imagine it's thousands of invoices every month, so it's not that easy to do this. And what I just think that especially for e-commerce, this system should be unified, because otherwise it can create really a huge problem.
Great case studies.
At least most system does this well, that you only have to, you don't have to register for every single country, but it also it only accounts for digital goods, of course. So yeah, you are one to sell digital goods.
Is the barrier to have one-stop shop from the beginning of the year, or do you see it as a benefit?
Of course, I mean, all these, when you dig into detail, I was just on a seminar like 2 weeks ago, and I'm it's a huge thing. I mean, you have to have like two undistributable proofs of the country of residence, and you have to, I mean, you can take IP address for example. Okay, so you know that somebody is in Slovakia, and if he writes you that he's from Germany, you don't know which VAT you should apply, because you don't have two proofs. And we were sitting at EY consultants, and they have German IP address. So if they wanted to buy, because of the branch and so on, if they wanted to buy ebook, for example, they were sitting here, a few hundred meters from here. They would write, and they're from Slovakia. The system would go, okay, no, you can buy it because you have German IP, and I don't know which VAT should I apply. It's like, and it's starting January 1st. And you have to adjust prices. I mean, you have to explain customers that, okay, my price without VAT is €5, and just because you are from there, I'm billing you this amount, and they don't care. I mean, and sometimes I don't, not really able to know which country he's from, because, for example, the Germany or whatever, he writes only after filling the order. So I can show him the prices based on IP address, for example. But then if he writes in another details, at the checkout process, the price will change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting.
Maybe we're going towards the American system, where everything will be just written without VAT.
And then at the end,
then the applicable VAT will be applied.
So and yet it's compulsory to say prices including VAT.
Yeah.
So we know that's something that consumers really hate. Is they hate not knowing the price, because
I hate it.
You get all the way through to the checkout, and then I've got to pay for shipping, and I've got to pay for VAT, and I've got to pay to use my credit card. Come on.
Ryanair.
Okay, second point I think we touched on was the consumer protection, and how do you feel about it in Slovakia and V4 countries and the region in general?
We had the chance to talk a little about the regulations and stuff, and yeah, the thing is that many things are not coming from Slovak government, but it's coming from EU. So, for example, all these recent changes that came into action a few months ago about all these offline forms you have to send to customer with returning forms. I mean, in 21st century, you have to send him offline form for returning goods. Why? I mean, why? And you have to change all the order buttons. It's not just order. You have to write it's order with obligation to pay. What? I mean, how do we want to compete with American companies or whatever if on mobile phone I have to have huge button, order with obligation to pay? And it's details, but I just don't get it why this legislation just came along, because I don't see any customers not getting it that you are obliged to pay when you order something. If you take something in the store, physical store, you are obliged to pay for it if you want to live with it. And we are not putting stickers on every single product. You have to pay for this. You take it. Why? We are trying to foster e-commerce, and we are doing everything that puts barriers.
And there's an interesting point here about legislation and going back to the discussion we had on cookies earlier on, which again is another example I keep using, which is, you know, I feel like shouting at my computer, I get it. You have been flashing up this little box at me for 2 years saying you consent to cookies. And kind of there's a time limitedness that is here. And sometimes you have to, there are protections or things that have to be put in place as a market starts that actually in due course, people will understand that actually, you know, if I click on a website, yes, I am accepting cookies. That's just the way it is. You know, it might have been important.
For 10 years.
It might have been important for the first month, but does that mean for the next 10, 15 years, I'm going to keep having this box flash up at me about cookies when I know already? And I think that there's a question there about some of this informing consumer, which I think is important. You know, consumers do need to be informed about what their obligations and liabilities are when they are buying things online. But that might apply to the first time they buy something online. But actually, as the market develops, you usually get the hang of it, and you find, I don't know about you, but I might have read terms and conditions once, but I don't think I bother now. I just click the box and click buy. And you think, well, actually, is there some way you can have time limited kind of legislation or sunsetting, we refer to, so that actually says, yes, you need it for a period of time, but actually over time, actually it just becomes the way the market operates, and therefore you can sunset some regulation. I don't know.
That's a very interesting point.
And the important point here is that American companies don't have to do this. How do we want to compete on global market? We have all this legislation, and American companies don't have to do all this stuff. I mean, nobody bothers you with cookies alert when you go on American eShop.
That's what actually I said earlier already, that the European Commission has double tracks in protecting consumers and helping businesses. That's their solutions are not very business oriented.
Not even people oriented. I mean, here's the customer who hates it.
At least this is what they think.
From the cookies alert, who benefits from the order with obligation to pay, who benefits from getting 2 more papers with your shipment when you don't even want to get the invoice in paper, you just want to get it online. I just throw it out. What's the point? Who's the benefit?
Is it because they are getting, people are complaining, or is it too many frauds, or there must be some reasoning behind? I mean, I'm asking.
I think the main reason is what Peter said, that the legislation is 7 years behind, sort of. So I'm sure that roots of this started somewhere in 2003, 2004, I don't know, the first ideas. And by the time all the people got used to it, how the e-shops work, all the people used to tracking on websites, and you even can have browser that you can disallow to have cookies, and your problem is solved if you don't like them. And so all the market already got used to it, and legislation is now, wow, we are going to protect you. But come on, we already know how to live in this environment. You don't have to tell us now.
I think some of us do. I mean, I think there's partly a challenge here. So, for example, I checked in online last night to my flight home and got my boarding pass on my phone, which for me is still novel. I'm not a digital native. It's still a bit novel for me, but 5 years ago that would have been unthinkable.
Okay.
You have a physical boarding pass. In 2 or 3 years' time, it will be remarkable for you to have a physical boarding pass. Technology moves on, and we adjust to it. And whilst we're doing that adjustment, you need to kind of just help us through a little bit.
Okay.
But actually, in due course, it will just be obsolete. So the idea of a credit note is kind of a vague concept nowadays. You just expect to get a a promotional code. I don't know if you still have coupons in newspapers, money off coupons in newspapers.
We do.
Yes.
I remember my mother used to always cut out these coupons and go into the supermarket with a fist of them and be sat there, and that's gone. That's gone. You just have an offer code.
It's not in the newspaper, but some of the retailers do still have small like booklets that they send to your home.
You still get a few of them.
Points for something.
But nowadays it's on the loyalty card, isn't it? It's all done on the loyalty card, or it's done on a code. So just the technology has moved on, and the regulation needs to move with it in due course. The challenge is, I think, that we're sat here as part of the 65% or 70% are happy to buy online and happy to transact online. There's still a 30% who are not. And, you know, there are still some for whom the thought of not having a physical piece of paper is very difficult. You know, I think about my 8-year-old mother and whether or not she would want to have a physical invoice. Knowing her, she's got a little filing cabinet that she puts all her invoices in and keeps them there just in case I need to send it back.
Sure.
And the thought of having an email. So there's a question about how do you regulate for the digital natives as well as those who are still very rooted in the physical world.
But is she ever going to shop online, even though all the regulations in the world would be in place? I mean, there are some people that just by design won't go there. They get all the advantages, everything. So what we are doing now is we are chasing maybe 2% out of those 30%. And making it more complicated for those 65% who already get it and have no problems at all. And this is the main problem with all the European regulations and stuff, not just in this area, that they are trying to think on those minority of people who get some problems while making it so much more complicated for majority of people. So there's no question why there is all these Eurosceptics parties and a lot of turnout here. Because majority of people hate it.
Just paperwork. More stuff to chuck out when you open the parcel.
It is, yeah. So
we touched on payments already. I was just curious what you think about e-payments and in other countries. We talked about Slovakia and Czech Republic is similar with the percentage of paying cash on delivery, but what about other countries? What is your experience? Maybe where do you see the future?
I think credit cards are the future, or similar forms of payments which go cross-border, because even in Slovakia, okay, we get 30% of payments online, but out of that only like 15% is by credit cards. The remaining 15% is by SportPay, TatraPay. Every single bank in Slovakia has its own payment system, which is you have connected it to your bank account. So, for example, at our web shop, we have like 13 means of pay, 13. So you can choose. I mean, it's good for, but it's good for a customer because it comes directly from the account. He doesn't have to have a credit card, and it's good for us because it's free. We don't have to pay any card fees because it's just bank transfer. So all we pay is like a few cents for a transaction, no matter the size, and not 1, 2, 3, 4% for paying via PayPal or Visa or MasterCard.
Our numbers are even worse in this respect. In Slovakia, we have only 20% or even less, 18% of customers paying online or by bank transfer. Everything else is cash on delivery. We even added a fee for the customer that he's going to pay if he chooses the option cash on delivery. But
they keep choosing it.
Yeah, they keep choosing it, exactly. And in Hungary, it's even worse. So there, it's 98% of customers paying cash on delivery. So in fact, everybody.
Obviously, I told you it's cheaper to pay cash on delivery than
so
bank card. So we want, and obviously also that everybody's afraid that how to say. A large portion of people are not taxing according to the rules, or employed by a company that put them on minimum wage. So that means if they pay through a bank account, that means that the tax authorities can better control. Yeah, it's a large portion of society still looks like that. So.
The only explanation is some sort of black economy behind this, because people, they just have cash there. In Czech Republic, it's much better. There is like 60 to 40, so the numbers are better. Croatia, surprisingly, it's 50 to 50. So many people in Croatia, they are paying using their cards. Yeah.
Are you seeing changes in the way that deliveries take place? Because one of the things we've started to see is a real growth of click and collect. So I will buy on the website, and then I will collect from either from a small branch of the shop that doesn't have the full range of stock in, just as there to collect. Amazon are now doing lockers, so you go to the metro station and you can go to a locker and pick it up. All sorts of different ways, because no one wants to have to stay in to wait for a delivery. So I want to pick up my goods when I want. Will that change cash on delivery?
This has been phenomenon in Slovakia and Czech Republic since ever. So you are lagging behind, sorry. No. In Slovakia, if an e-shop has option to pick up option, then, for example, our numbers are like, it's less than half, but it's tens of percents of all the orders are picked up personally, and we only have 6 pickup places in Slovakia, in 5 cities.
And is that
we are
cash
the
on
biggest
delivery? Is that cash on delivery then?
Oh, well, they pay, yeah, that's basically not, they don't pay in advance, but almost, so those numbers are not 70-30, maybe they're 90 to 10. But when they collect it, they, many of them pay by card. So it's electronic payment, but not in advance.
I have 2 questions for you. If you would rank, Dominic, if you would rank first V4 countries, from your experience, which one is most digital savvy? Which one?
Okay, so again, a surprise, our biggest revenues are in Hungary, although everything else is not so good there. But still, I think Czech Republic would be at the first place. Yeah. Then Slovakia, with Hungary, Romania and Croatia. Surprisingly, Romania writes huge numbers. The market grows sometimes 50%. We experience 50% growth month over month. Yeah. At the beginning, of course, but still a huge growth. The web shops there, they made a break even in 2 months, which is unbelievable. How people are curious about
Romania is a big market
in Romania, and the market is just huge. And the Western e-commerce companies, they just somehow forgot this market. They are not there. So we tried it, and it shows up to be a success there. Croatia is our weakest market. So Croatia is somehow, the people there are not used to buy online. The logistics is very bad. It's really a huge problem there. Although the owner of UPS branch in Croatia, it's Austrian Post, so their systems are quite good. But just there are so many islands and everything. So.
So many beautiful islands.
Yeah, so many beautiful islands, but it's quite a hard territory for our logistics.
Yeah. And second question would be for Michal Meško. Last time we were seated in this room on digital agenda, we had also chief economist of a bank, of one of the top 3 banks in Slovakia, and also at the Tatra summit 2 weeks ago he was there, and it seems that the banks are following what's going on with payments, and it seems that they have evaluated that the way how digital economy develops will transform their business model, and they have not figured out yet where it will go and how. But I wonder, what's your experience from these 13 different paying systems, as you know, according to a bank, what they offer and customers? Where do you see the flow moving? And then for Peter, has it transformed the banking business in London so far?
Okay, so basically all the payment system is just a single formula where you pre-fill things like amount and some symbol order number, and you redirect your customer to his banks of the choice website, and he only fills in his login details and confirm via SMS or credit card or whatever, and confirms, and it takes you back, and okay, the payment is confirmed, and you can either ship things or you can allow him to download something. All these payment methods were created 5 to 7 years ago, and frankly, there is no big need to upgrade them somehow. So I don't see any huge changes in this. So banks just got used to it. Okay, people want this because Tatra Banka has it and Sporiteľňa has it. So we want to have it as well. But there is not a big space for innovation in there, because as a customer or as an e-shop, you have to connect to 13 different banks or 10 different banks if you want to allow customers to pay with every single of them. There are some startups that just work just as a payment gate. So as an e-shop, you just order some payment gate, and they make the arrangement with all the banks for you. So you don't have to. But I don't see any huge like changes in this in recent years.
So may I have just one comment? This all involves or applies to national markets.
Yeah,
right?
it's national
So
market.
in terms of cross-border
It's just
commerce,
credit card.
It's just credit card. But you said that it's one of the major problems is that people don't tend to use credit cards when buying things online in cross-border market. They might be afraid of giving their bank details or credit card details, etc., because we have so many different paying methods in every country that sometimes it's really worrying what's coming out of it. But is there a solution for having like a common payment platform for e-commerce or for e-shops in the EU countries that would make that easier or more trustable for customers and consumers to really give that details in, because they know the same payment system applies in their own country and it's safe, etc.
Yeah,
It's some kind of a PayPal.
Maybe a certificate of some kind.
Actually, the thing is that
Is there a need? That's my question.
For most e-shops, it's not. We don't even have to access to credit card data, because one of the banks is taking care of this for us. So when you choose to pay with credit card, you don't fill in details on our website. We redirect you to the website of the bank that has a service.
But this has different interfaces. So
Yeah, sure. But the thing is, I think the main problem is that they are just afraid to buy from Slovakia, not that they are afraid to fill in some numbers. They are afraid of Slovakia or any other country that is east or something. I think this is the main problem, not that the form would seem untrustworthy or something. That's my take.
I think there's probably I think there's a combination fear.
Okay.
I think that if I was a UK consumer buying from another member state, I wouldn't sit there and list out everything that I'm afraid of. There wouldn't be a list. It would just be, ooh, it's foreign, it's different, I'm scared. Because, and then what would lie behind that would be a combination of payment, refunds, language, a whole bunch of issues. And in terms of payments, it's interesting. I mean, we do have a common platform. It's called PayPal, but people don't use it. And in the UK, which is why we don't use it. We've seen PayPal has not penetrated the UK market in a significant way. Even with the privacy, you know, they've got better privacy, the best privacy going. People don't use it because it costs. In the UK, we went from being dominated by credit cards, and now credit cards are very small in the market share. It's now debit cards.
Okay, we call it the same here, because
whereas for us they're different, because there's usually a 2% surplus, 2% fee that is passed on to the consumer if you use your credit card, whereas a debit card is much cheaper. And some of the reasons around it are around our national consumer protection. There was a court case 20 years or so ago that said actually when you buy something on a credit arrangement, actually the credit company is part of the agreement, and therefore if there is a default or your goods are faulty, there is a guarantee from the credit card company that you'd get your money back. And that pays. But that's one of the reasons why
I think from the UK, people are willing to use their credit cards and debit cards, because if the goods are faulty and they're over £100, I can get the money back from the credit card. If there is a fraud on my account and I can prove that I haven't been negligent, actually the bank will pick up the tab. So that gives confidence for people to use the cards online. So now we are seeing the vast majority of now debit card transactions, hardly any credit cards, no checks, no cash on delivery. And that has driven a change in the banking sector because it's all automated. So what you're seeing is it's a single process. I think the difference with Slovakia is actually the debit cards are usually provided by either MasterCard or Visa. So they don't have an individual bank one. So actually the debit card is just accepted by any e-shop. And we have 2 or 3 big players in the market who are payment handlers who will handle the payment and the relationship with the bank for you at pretty much low cost. So it's very easy. The payment just appears in your bank account.
Can you feel or see the difference after introducing CEPI in the EU?
It's just longer numbers to fill in. You cannot read it, and you always get mistakes.
More difficult to explain to the consumers, to the customers, that please supply us the IBAN number, and not only just your small account numbers. The customer supports keeps fighting with this.
Okay. What about the alternative payment methods like e-wallets or something like that? Would you see that as a future, or?
And for retail, for example, Apple Pay, if it goes well and has reasonable price setting, and Google would, for example, catch up with some sort of NFC wallets in phones, yeah, that could be a great thing because, for example, in Slovakia, we are one of the highest adopters of contactless payments. I mean, it was just huge. Even banks were like taken by surprise how quickly people adapted to this. And so I think, especially in Slovakia, people are willing to use new technology. So yeah, e-wallets would be fine if I didn't have to pull out my card and just put my phone or something. But it takes some time before all the devices are in place.
I think the challenge here is we're not seeing a coming together in the market, a coalescence in the market around a single payment method. Although the cards are doing well, I'm conscious in Denmark they have the Dankort that you have to be physically established in Denmark to have or to accept, but actually that's the main method they have for payment. In Estonia, your ID card, your national ID card, is your bank card. It's what they've done there is just awesome. But everything is off your electronic ID card. It allows you to pay for things. You can have your prescriptions for your pharmacy on there. Everything is done on the single card.
Doesn't that scare you as a British person? Sorry.
We didn't even get past the having an ID card stage.
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
But I think just what it means is there's a real challenge about will we ever get to a single payment method, and the answer is I can't see it. I just maybe in a long time, but there's just too much investment already in different systems. The question is about, can you start moving towards a situation where a retailer doesn't have to accept 13 or 15 types of payment, but actually by having 2 or 3 can cover most of them.
Yeah, it's a situation here. I mean, if we didn't have 13, just 3, we wouldn't lose more than maybe 5% of the sales or 3%, but still 3% is a huge number. So that's the point. And we've seen it in Czech Republic when we only had one payment option. For example, sales were some high. When we added 2 more, sales did go a little up, but the new payment methods got like 30% all of a sudden. So that meant that the old method just got lower. So if people want to buy, even if you offer them just one method, and I think even if it would be like credit card or debit card, in Slovakia we consider it the same, most people just would buy it anyway.
Because they have 2 or 3 different cards that they could use. So, and there's a question, if when you see you've kind of got 13 different ways of payment, and there's an interesting question, if a consumer, how many different methods of payment do they have? You know, I'm conscious at home, I have 3 or 4. So if you don't offer me all 13, but you offer me 4, I can still pay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just switch to an alternative.
If you just offer cash on delivery, everybody can pay.
We did that in Slovakia, that we offer just cash on delivery, credit card, and PayPal, and not these 13 other methods. And yeah, it's okay. So nobody complains about it.
Yeah, interesting.
I think it's not about the payment method; it's about the credibility of the e-shop. So if the merchant has good reviews, then you don't have any reason why not to pay or why not to use any of the methods.
I have a question about trust, because would that improve cross-border e-commerce if there would be a EU trust marks or some way of certifying e-shops that they are credible or responsible when handling their customers? Would you see that improving the e-commerce?
Oh, we've had discussions about trust marks. And I find the Slovak experience really interesting, because I think what we found is that trust marks give some protection, some confidence, but the biggest confidence comes from other consumers, actually. And you almost have a hierarchy of what you believe. So you believe the website, not much. You believe the trust mark a bit, but you always got that question. We had a bit of a scandal in the UK a few years ago where it was exposed one of the trust marks had no protections around it. You just paid money to get it and use it. And this was not on e-shops, this was just a physical one. And so ever since then, people have gone, yeah, you've got a trust mark, but how do I know what's associated with that? And unless I, as a consumer, am going to research the criteria for that trust mark, it doesn't mean much to me. The next rung up is then the reviews of other people. So you look at the reviews of other people and you get some confidence from that. But then you always wonder whether actually there was a review that was written by the brother of the person who owns the e-shop or by the owner of the e-shop. So there's always a question of that. And then the highest degree of confidence comes from actually if one of my friends has bought from that shop and they personally recommend it to me. And I wonder whether in the future you'll see more of things like Facebook being used as almost a consumer portal, that actually I can see so-and-so has bought from this retailer and has said it is good, and therefore I will have some confidence. And you can see how a business model could be created that actually I will give you a discount on your goods if you, or on your next purchase, if you agree to leave feedback or whatever. So there's a question there about trust marks. I don't think they're the silver bullet. I think they help, but actually there's always questions over what does the trust mark stand for, and actually people are more interested in the feedback from my friends and family or from other people than anything else. And you look at the success of TripAdvisor, which is built on that model. I think that'll be the future.
I think we're naturally suspicious in the UK, so an EU trust mark wouldn't be effective, I don't think.
Yeah. Actually, in Slovakia, these trust marks come actually from the customers of the e-shop. So maybe the most used ones are from these price comparison engines, so which are really strong in this field. So actually, each of the 3 biggest price comparison engines has its own system to get reviews from the customers for the e-shop. So, and then they're just putting these stickers or widgets or whatever we call it on the merchant side, and then because the customers know the price comparison engine and they can see the trust mark, actually they just trust the merchant. So it's very strong in Slovakia, and there's also this Slovak Association for Electronic Commerce, which has this site Bezpečný nákup, is like a safe buy or something like that. But it doesn't say much about how the customer is happy with the merchant, but it just says that you are, from the legal point of view, that you are able to
You're in compliance with laws.
With laws, but not, it doesn't say anything about the customer satisfaction. So I think, yeah, it will, we talk about justice, or justice, how to say it?
It's Y-O-U.
Yeah, so justice.
Justice.
Yeah, so I know they are trying to create this kind of trust mark across all Europe, I think. So let's see how it goes, and I think this will definitely help the customers maybe trust more the merchants from other countries, so to increase these cross-border sales.
Help me to understand dynamics among countries on this, because if you push digital single market, some countries will be clear winners, or they will win more than the others. I would expect, for instance, the UK to clearly benefit from a digital single market if it's pushed from the Commission side, as we discussed during the break, in the right way, so that it encourages more commerce rather than comes up with too many regulation and the protection of data and so on, which will really rather diminish the growth that is there. But who, from your experience, I'm looking at now on the other side of the table, would be a clear winner in the region here around us? Would it be Czech Republic? Would they be interested to lead then the V4 discussions? And who would be the clear winner except the UK on the EU 28?
Can I just challenge that as a question?
Okay.
Because I think it's not a case of winners and losers. Because what you're talking about is you're getting markets to operate more efficiently by taking down the barriers between them. And I think one of the things that we've identified, we were talking about this in the break, that arguably some of the smaller member states are going to be the biggest gainers from more e-commerce, because you're actually going to have access to larger markets and a wider range of goods and services than you do within your current markets. And you have some markets that are pretty captive, they're dominated by one or two players, and actually creating genuine competition will deliver results both in terms of making your businesses more competitive, but also in terms of your consumers. It was interesting you talking about Croatia and Croatia lagging behind because so many islands. I thought that was quite interesting. Because you could argue, if you can sort out the logistics situations, they stand to benefit disproportionately. We found this with parts of Scotland, which are very remote, which are cut off from retail. Actually, e-commerce is an absolute godsend for them, because they can actually get things that they would otherwise be 2 days travel and a ferry away. So I think I just challenge the question slightly. I think you have to kind of disaggregate it a bit to say, actually, there are some consumer benefits and there are some retailer benefits and there are some economy benefits. I think it's really hard to say what the overall economic benefits would be and whether one country would do better than another. I think you'd have to look at where markets are inefficient and reckon that there would be efficiency gains from removing barriers at a macroeconomic level. At a microeconomic level, I think that there's huge potential for particularly niche retailers to benefit across the whole EU, because actually you're getting access to a much wider market. You can argue there'll be more of a battle between the big players, the big established department stores on the internet, if you like. And then the consumer benefits, I think there's particularly those countries that are currently got a fairly low degree of e-commerce stand to benefit the most from a consumer point of view, both in terms of price and choice. So sorry to challenge your question.
No, thank you very much.
It's a valid question, but I think you just...
And then just to continuing along that train of thought, on the EU level then, what are the key poles or emphases emerging? I mean, on one hand, we discussed during the break, would be as a result of the Snowden affair and the political backlash that took place in Germany, there might be an overarching stress on protection of data and security. So that's one pole of the debate. what are the others posed in this debate emerging on the EU?
I think the other pole is you then look at the digital natives who about data protection, and you have other people who can't seem to share enough of their data online. You know, I have friends who stick the most daft posts on Facebook, and it's like, enough already. You know, they can't go an hour without sharing part of their private life online. And so I think those are the poles of the debate. I think you'll have those who are concerned about data protection and about their digital identity, and for those for whom actually their digital identity is their identity. You know, that's the way they live their lives. And I think that will determine the poles of the debate. You could argue that there's and that if you look at who the policymakers are, they're not the digital natives. That's the generation that's coming up.
So you have a generational element to that, and you also have national element to it.
You also have a national element.
Own sensitivity is shaped in the last few years and by the domestic debate.
Yeah.
So where do you see UK in this, and who are your biggest friends?
I'm not sure quite where we are, actually. I think most governments are slightly schizophrenic around data protection. But on the other hand, you know, we want to create open, functioning markets. So I think it's really quite hard to pitch that. I mean, I think the Snowden affair hasn't helped, but that has almost been a geopolitical question operating in a foreign policy context and a security context rather than an economic concept. And I think what you have underpinning all of this is actually the American companies that we haven't talked about that will come in anyway. So being blunt, Europe can have its own nice internal discussion about data protection and how we really want to protect data. Meanwhile, Google and Amazon will just march in there and will dominate. So there is a question about, do you try and be King Canute trying to hold back the tide and say, no, we must have data protection, when actually you've got this whole digital world of Facebook, Google and Amazon that is hoovering up data every second of every day. So I just kind of wonder whether we need to slightly get over ourselves in having this discussion and realise that we can't have this discussion around data protection in isolation from the global factors. There is a very serious national security discussion that needs to take place. And actually a lot of what the Snowden affair was actually about snooping, cybersecurity, etc. That is quite different, I think, in some respects, to the discussion we're having around about actually e-commerce, about me as a citizen wanting to buy things online and choosing to share some of my personal data in order to do that. I think it's that they've got conflated, and I think almost we need to separate them back out again and say there's a national security, cybersecurity discussion, and there's a commercial discussion here about e-commerce, and just have them slightly separately. I think combining them will hold us back, and whilst we're held back and whilst we delay, the big US corporations will come in there. Yeah.
I think Google's example, it's the best, is to describe what Europe does with the removal of personal data. And that you finally, there is this European legislation that you can ask for that. Why Google basically, what Google did basically is that for each and every case, they forwarded to a open data association in the United States. So whenever it's removed, it's still going to up there because they're uploading everything. So in return, so we had a European legislation, but there is a free access to data movement in the United States, and Google automatically sends all the requests, and yes, maybe they remove, but another company will upload the same data. So we are just going around.
Excuse me, I'm very sorry I have to leave, but it was really great talking to you today, especially Peter for sharing with us.
Thank you.
what strikes me with e-commerce is this. What I see is that another barrier that a couple of other barriers we didn't discuss today is that what I feel in my country is that the language barrier. And you said that trust and all these issues. That I think the biggest problem for us is that nobody creates a globally Hungarian language web shop because, or some of the companies does, but it's a small market relatively, and only 20% of the people speaks English, or even less, or a foreign language. So that means that basically, unless there is not a Hungarian version of it doesn't really work to enter to the Hungarian market because only 19–20% would understand what's on the website. So I think it's a major problem. I don't know how to deal with. And the other is that that was partially mentioned is shipping. I just checked one of the big company in a European level shipping. Their shipping policy is, but I think I saw similar in other ones, is that if they are shipping to Italy, their cost would be about for the 5–10 day, 2–6 days, sorry, 2–6 days, €10. In France, for the same 2–6 days, €6 with the regular post. In Hungary or in Central Europe, for 5–10 days, so double time, it would cost 25 euros compared to the French €6. So,
this is exactly a spot where you have division between all the new member states.
Yes.
On the one hand, we are glad that and this is Barroso when he was leaving. I think that was one of the messages that these divisions towards the end of his mandate blurred. There's no longer many things that distinguish member states in policy making in Brussels, unless you discuss cohesion funds, of course. But this is real life where. Since these companies and their warehouses or logistical centers are still based, Germany, elsewhere, they price our markets and deliveries differently. And this is one thing where I personally want to really appeal to our MEPs, because their job with the European Parliament becoming stronger and having at least more ambitious, this is their job. I mean, if there will be proposals on digital single market coming from the Juncker Commission in a few months, I want them to take an axe and look at these things and do hearings and whatever, and look at the bottom line and at the core issue that can be perhaps regulated from Brussels on this.
There are also good examples, sorry to interrupt. For example, there is a UK sport retailer that is selling online also in Slovakia, and recently I was ordering from them and I was surprised that the delivery cost was only £3.30 to deliver to Slovakia, which is surprisingly low. So there are companies that they have more customers, they sell more goods and are able to make some delivery channels and find courier companies that are able to deliver it within 5 days for up to £5, which was good improvement.
Well, there's a commercial decision here.
Yeah.
There's a commercial decision about the extent to which do you pool the costs and actually have a single pricing model across the EU, or do you differentiate your market into national markets? And I think it's harder to justify having geo pricing in a single market. I think it's just I think you're right to raise it as an issue, and I think you'll be pushing at an open door with the Commission, because the Commission are picking up just the same kind of issues. I think there has been some discussion around should there be legislation that means that a service provider or a retailer has to offer in all 28 member states, and that would be kind of a logical extension of that kind of principle. And I think that would be going too far, because actually people need to make their own commercial decisions. But actually discriminating on price between member states, I think, is very hard to justify.
But I think what we should do in some sense is that because I think it's not only a company's fault, it's partly the national posts, which are still monopolies in Europe, and the Commission can do nothing to stop these monopolies, is a similar limit we did with the mobile phones. So if we would set up a maximum price, such as we did in the roaming prices, to postal prices, that could give a significant boost. And I think that would be essential, because as long as they are monopolies, the national post offices, they can do this game and limiting whole digital economy.
I can tell you our experience. It's almost the same. Our biggest warehouse is in Germany, in Hamburg, and from there the goods are shipped to UK, because we have a UK-based shop. We are cooperating with Amazon in UK. And also from this warehouse, we wanted to ship the goods to the eastern markets, to Slovakia and to Romania, etc. So we started to negotiate with UPS, and they gave us prices which were, I mean, we couldn't do the business with them, so that was not possible. So then we started to think of another model. So what we thought out was that we signed a contract with the German cargo, who sends us a truck each day from Hamburg to Bratislava. So each working there is a truck coming to Bratislava and unloads the parcels at the UPS station here in Bratislava. Okay, so it stays in the UPS group still, and the Slovak UPS is distributing the parcels to these Eastern European countries. And if we compare the price per parcel, what UPS offered us, and still the price they said was quite good, because we wanted to ship huge amounts. And what we have now, the difference is almost 45% of savings. And so it doesn't mean that they had bigger costs, because they would send a truck, exactly the same truck as we are sending now for German cargo. It will be just a UPS truck from Hamburg to Bratislava. But they have somehow other measures to the Eastern European market as a big multinational group. So I think this shows a good example that it should be somehow at least a little bit regulated, because then it's a big disadvantage for this part of Europe.
Do you have something written on this? Do you have this on paper?
On paper, I mean, you as a case study, or
yeah, something that we can use.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, I can provide you with any details. No problem.
I mean, we've heard stories of companies in France loading everything into a van, driving across the Belgian border, and then just dumping it in the Belgian National Post because of kind of more efficient postal systems.
While we are so much fighting and spending so much energy on mobile companies and monopolies on that field, we did still nothing with the National Post, and I don't really get why. I mean, I see the interest, because they are mostly owned by the governments, but still, I think that's a major issue we should approach.
And I think it raised a really interesting question in terms of your paper. One of the recommendations is that actually you need to look at e-commerce as a process, actually as an entire process. It's not just the transaction. There is a whole process that takes place from being aware of what the offers are, and we touched on price comparison and actually being aware of what's on offer, through to actually being able to find what you want and being able to trust the website, the advertising rules, knowing what the legal requirements are. And we haven't touched on, different member states have different rules about the information that a website has to show. So in Germany, you have to show the fabric composition of any garment actually on the website. That's not the same in other member states. So straight away, you have a different set of rules. Then you have the payment process, and we've touched on the payment process. And finally, you have to look at the delivery process. And I think, there has been European action in some areas of that process, but not in others. And I think delivery is one area that I think there's a growing consensus that there are unjustifiable differences and discrimination between member states that needs to be addressed.
I think we're approaching noon, which is great, because I mean,
you try to get rid of us.
I said I'm gonna say something silly, so the time is now. Anyway, do you have any other comments on the practical side of things from your experience you would like to share? We touched on tax, we touched on deliveries, payment options, and protection of the customer and data protection. Is there anything else that's pressing you as a business, or you would like to improve?
I would say in general that I think we all know who are in business in e-commerce, know what to do to grow the business, to expand, to develop, and so on. So maybe we just need less barriers, less regulation, simple legislation, and it's like referee on the soccer field, you know, you just don't want to see him too much. So when there's too much of the referee, then he just destroys the game, you know. So I think it's similar here. So we just want to play the game, and we know how to play. So we just need to the referee to go maybe somewhere, you know. Is that what I say? I don't want to be offensive or nothing like that.
That's a nice analogy, but yes, we understand. Dominic, would you like to add something?
Yeah, just from a Slovak point of view, what we need here specifically is another dispute resolution system with consumers. Because here in Slovakia, as I already said, the disputes are somehow done through consumer protection state authorities, which is state trade inspection. Whereas not from the legal point of view, because in this sense the trade inspections try to be somehow a modern Robin Hood for the consumers, but in fact it's a fake Robin Hood. I will explain why. Because in fact they are not fighting for the consumer as a person, because at the end, if the web shop did something wrong, the inspection cannot order to the, or say to the web shop, pay to the consumer the refund or something. They can just give him a fine, yeah, and then the consumer must go to the court. So and I think the people they just don't know this, so they always apply to the state authorities instead of going to the court directly. So I think alternative dispute resolution system could be the way here, yeah. Or a specialized state courts just for consumer protection.
Well, actually, the Slovak Trade Inspection is the state authority body which is which has competence in the maintaining or preserving the rights of consumer, but in the matter of preserving the public rules. So in case it's the public rules were breached by some trader, the Slovak Trade Inspection will may process this case, and it may give some sanction to it or so on, but this got nothing to do with the case itself in its nature. So in case the consumer wants to deal with its thing or to get his rights, he has only one option to claim this case to the court. Currently, we have the competence of common courts, which are the state authority in Slovakia, and the current approach in the dispute resolution in Slovakia is now in the National Council, which is now processing the new act on consumer dispute resolution, which will be a new act which will be devoted exactly only for the cases which are involved by the consumers, and this will stipulate some alternative dispute entities as well as courts, but made on the private basis, as well as it was now
on a private basis. It is in connection with the agenda of the European Commission, who says that there should be in every state an alternative dispute resolution system. Because today in the morning I saw that it will be a topic today, so I just checked the website of European Commission to see if there is anything in Slovakia regarding this. And out of I just printed out the screenshot. So out of all the countries, only Slovakia and Croatia we don't have this yet. So all other countries they have this already. So I'm very happy to hear that. Yeah, it will be here soon. So
But I think it's very important to get some kind of network between all those agencies across the EU, because if we like really stay within our national borders, resolving alternatively the cases, that wouldn't really facilitate e-commerce cross-border. So that's why I think these like business-oriented solutions that gives a common level playing field for all member states could really help us to get more trust in other countries, even Eastern ones.
If I make if I may, I want to first of all recognize that we have Juraj Hajko and others tweeting live from here, and some of our tweets were picked up by Slovak Foreign Minister Lajčák already.
I have nothing to do with it.
I'm looking at you because you're from this. And this is one in a series, or another one in a series of events in which CEPI, Central European Policy Institute, is involved, thanks to the Visegrad Fund grant. What we want to do, and actually, let me also say that there is a short summary of a discussion we had last week at the Tatra Summit here with some of you. Where we want to get in a few months is to have a solid policy brief with recommendations on what can be done on the V4 level, so that before the end of the Slovak presidency of the Visegrad Group in June, there can be a roadmap for the group where to go next, and that Czech presidency that is next can develop some of the elements. So this discussion was very useful and very practical. It helps us to map out other segments of the digital agenda and narrow down our targets and recommendations really well. We are not part of the we are not part of the business, so to speak. We are a stakeholder, but not practitioner. So it's always fascinating to convene people from the other side for various sectors, actually, from business and from private sector and from government. And we hope to, again, take some of these ideas and recommendations next week to Brussels. It's good to know, for instance, that the Czech Ministry of Economy is punching above their weight, because they can lead the region. They can have more countries behind them if they have already identified issues of joint interest. And the V4, the Visegrad Group, works really well as a platform as long as individual governments identify their common interest. Then they can be an added value and aggregate on the EU level. And on digital single market, hey, this is what we can utilize. So thank you very much once again for Petra for putting this together. I think it's a great job of the UK. This is good public diplomacy on the side of your government. We welcome that you come back as a leader on some agenda, and that you can also help our national discussion. That's a thank you to US, to the UK Embassy.
Thank you to Petra and you for hosting us. We wouldn't be able to done that without you. So
Thank you very much for coming and spending 3 hours of your day with discussion, and hopefully we will help your business along the line.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, and please help us with this refreshment.
Yes.
Safe to be back.
Thank you.